Visual assistance indicator gives a visual representation of high and low values that would be considered horizontal and dynamic support and resistance. High and low points in price are projected by horizontal lines, which is often referred to as horizontal support and horizontal resistance, and sloping lines, which is also known as dynamic support and dynamic resistance. The user has several inputs that can be edited. Let's talk about them right now. We're starting here with Bitstamp on the weekly time frame to show you how the values are displayed. So you can see here that this downtrend line is connected from these two high points here, and this dynamic support line is connected from these values right here. Now you can change these to get different settings and measures, as well as the horizontal support and resistance. So we see we have a resistance zone up here and a support zone down here indicated by these lines. So we're going to take a look at some other time frames real quick. I'll jump into the 4-hour time frame, and we can see that we're getting different support and resistance zones now, both horizontally and dynamically. So we can see new values from new support and resistance zones on each time frame. We can actually zoom in here and see where these values are coming from. And now very clearly, very quickly, we can see that price is wedged up here. So without the indicator, what you would have to do is connect these points with your eyes. And it's not a difficult task, but it can be tedious if you're just starting out and you're not sure where to draw the values from. Not really going to make them perfect, just to save time on the video. So we can see, for example, that there is a wedge right here. To the untrained eye, it's quite possible this can be missed. And to an advanced or experienced trader, it's nice to have this tool able to just turn on. So now we see that those lines are drawn for us. And there are a couple other points that are connected. And again, we can change this in some of the values. We're just going over the visual representation of it. So now let's jump into the 1-hour time frame. And remember, we drew these from the 4-hour time frame. So we can actually draw over the lines now and see, okay, here's our next wedges. So now that this is drawing them for us, we can trace over it, and we can see here whichever one we want to follow through. If we want to follow both of them, or maybe just connect a line through the middle. If you want to follow both of them, that's fine. It gives you more precise trading ranges when you get down to a smaller scale. So let's just say that you do like to trade on a smaller time frame. You can continue with your multiple time frame analysis and see where new trends are being created. Now let's just turn this off, and we can see, remember, this was the larger time frame. Then we jump down into the 1H, and we had this wedge. So now we're looking again on the 15 minutes. And when we turn on the 15 minutes, we can see that there's an additional extra downtrend line right here that price could be either respecting or disrespecting. Now we're going to take a look at the 1-minute time frame really quickly. I'm just going to jump over to Bybit because there's more liquidity and the candlesticks won't look broken. Let's just go into the one, and we can see even here, those lines we didn't paint have still transferred over. So now we're looking at BTC here on the 1-minute time frame, and we can see where our new values are both dynamically and horizontally. So even if these values change, you'll be able to see the ranges change right in front of you. So now we can see resistance and support and a couple other zones that have been identified by the algorithm. So jumping back up to the 15-minute time frame now, I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at some other assets. We can see what LTC looks like. Let's go ahead and jump into Matic, trying to find something with a little bit different structure. And again, this is what it looks like with it off. There we go. Cardano has a nice rising wedge there, so we can see that's pretty good rising wedge. Gives us a quick clue about the market structure. Take a look at Dogecoin here, and we can see what Dogecoin looks like. That's a nice wedge right there on Doge. So with this information, you could be able to trade this wedge and bet whether you'd like to go into resistance or support as you take profit by taking a short or a long. Then we'll take a look at Solana just because. We'll go ahead and take a look at Uni. We'll take a look at XRP real quick. So there we can see the market structure given to us by the algorithm. Now let's just take a look at a random asset. I guess first thing that comes to mind was Plug, so we can take a look at a stock. Here we can see that Plug is also getting dynamic support and resistance lines generated by the algorithm. Take a look at some Forex. So here we go, taking a look at GBP USD. So it works on Forex charts, stock charts, and crypto charts in real time, and will update as well whenever you get new support and resistance lines when something is broken and a trend goes into a different direction. So I'm going to go back to BTC. So let's talk about the inputs. The default inputs are very good for observing dynamic support and resistance lines. So for number of candles observed, basically it tells you how many candles are being used to calculate the information and display your plot points. So if we just zoom out really quickly, we can see that Even though we have a high point right here, we're not getting information about it or a resistance point. That's because the information is 857 bars away. So if I wanted to include that information, I can just change that to 900 there. And then I can get information based on that value. So now we can see the larger trend and see how far it looks back. Now, if you try to put this too far back, you might get some issues based upon what time frame and how much information is there. Now, if we use horizontal support and resistance source, then we can see that we can change from high and low or close. So if you go to close, you're going to get different values. I like to leave it at high and low because that's usually where there is some solid support and resistance, and then in between you get different zones based on different high and lows. So it comes default high and low, but you can change it if you'd like to. Now the horizontal support and resistance left, this basically determines how many candles are observed to the left to determine if it's the highest point or not. So we can see here, if we change this to 500, then we're going to get a little bit of different values as resistance points. So it's going to be from the current candlestick looking back 500 sessions to see support and resistance levels. You can see it extends them. Now if I change that back, we can see it tightens up the range to a little bit more close and immediate support and resistance lines. If we change the horizontal support resistance right, we get a similar effect. By raising or lowering this, we can expand or contract the values at which our algorithmic support and resistance is generated. So I'll put that back to 25. Then we can see by changing this value, again, we have a similar concept here. If I put this up to 500, it's going to increase the values between them. And if we put it back down to 5, it's going to reduce the values between them. So if you're trying to look at a larger picture, or if you get onto a smaller time frame and you're trying to look at larger structure, there's a lot of different ways you can tweak this to get different values based on your preferences and style of trading. If you're new and don't really have a style of trading, just go ahead and leave the default values alone. And if you want to tweak it, you're more than welcome to. This is what everything does. Moving forward, we're looking at dynamic support and resistance resolution. So here I'll just zoom in a little bit, get this back up for us. Here we can see that if we shorten this right here, then we get more tighter values. And if we get it all the way down, we can see a bunch of ranges where it starts looking like the matrix. Then at 1, on most charts, it'll disappear. And then you can bring this up. So we're looking at greater values then whenever we change the resolution for dynamic support and resistance. And at some point when you go too far, it'll break as well. You can't go up as high as you can with some of the other horizontal support and resistance lines. So I'll put that back to 6 based upon how you want to trade. And then really quick, we'll just go into the 1 minute time frame so we can see how that adjusts a little bit greater here, because that's a pretty useful tool. We change this now up. So if we set it at 25 and we're on the 1 minute time frame, we can see a really nice structure here. If we turn it back down, let's just say to 4, then we can see that other structure we saw was gone and we have a bunch of different structure. So if you trade on the 1 minute time frame, you know that these can be respected and disrespected quite quickly. So it's nice to, like I said, change some of these around based upon your style and preference. And if you don't have a style or preference, just go ahead and leave everything default and you're good to go. So I'll go back up to the 15 minute time frame now and we'll take a look at the style. So let's go back to the settings, click style here. Then you can see we have these things right here. Let me move this out of the way. We have HSR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then we have lines. So lines, we'll talk about this because it's very quick and simple. Just turns on and off the dynamic support and resistance lines. So we're going to go ahead and leave them off for just a second so we can talk about the horizontal support and resistance. So here, based upon what values we have, sometimes they will change and regenerate in a way that is not in numerical order. So just because this is 1 does not mean this is 1. Just because this is 2 does not mean this is 2, okay? So let's just go ahead and see, for example, because this is how it ties into alerts. We'll talk about that really quickly. If we want current prices right here, if we want an alert when price crosses down this value, we're going to have to find that plot. And if we want an alert when price crosses over this value, we're going to have to find that plot. So let's just do a little bit of searching real quick so we can see what I'm talking about. So that one doesn't get turned on or off. We can see right there. That's not the one we're looking for. That's not the one we're looking for. That's not the one. Okay, so here's one that we were looking for. This is HSR 6. Horizontal support and resistance 6. In this case, it ended up being a resistance point. So it says SR because in some point it could be underneath if market price turns up above it. So now that we have located which one we want, we can come right here to our add alert. We can go to visual assistance. We'll talk about this in a moment, but for right now, we're just going to go ahead and go to BTC crossing up over visual assistance. And then remember, we found that it was HSR6. So we're just going to go ahead and click that. We're not going to use a webhook. We're just going to go ahead and show a pop-up. We're going to say BTC crossing resistance. And then we have our message to display right there. So now when we have price crossing up over the value of number 6, we'll get an alert. Here we have the alert. And when BTC crosses up over horizontal support resistance 6, we're going to get that alert. So on the flip side, if we wanted to use this one too, we still need an alert for that. We're just going to keep searching. So we know which one is number 6. Now we'll look at number 7, and there it was. That's the one. That's the next one we're looking for. So when we click this off, it goes away. So we know that's the value we need to trigger an alert for. So we're going to go ahead and put HSR7. I'm going to go here, add an alert. BTC is crossing. Now we're just going to use crossing down, because if we use crossing only, then anytime it crosses that value, you're going to get an alert. So when it crosses down, that means it's gone below the value that we have specified, which is our HSR7, and that is a horizontal support line. So we're going to get an alert when it breaks the support line now. And we're just going to go ahead and name this BTC crossing support. So there we go. BTC is crossing support. Now we'll get an alert here when this is crossed, and an alert here when this is crossed. So now moving forward into the style, we can actually change the colors of these if you want to have them whatever color you like, basically. And you're not going to be able to change any of these because they are meant to be support and resistance lines. So you're really not going to get any change no matter what you press here. You can just go ahead and leave it at line. Then we're going to turn these back on, because remember, these are our dynamic support and resistance lines. Now the precision is an NA value here, so no matter what you pick, it's not going to do anything. Labels on price scale are not going to do anything. On this indicator as well, we have another NA value. Values in status line, however, this will affect the points right here. So we can see if I click that, we're not going to be able to see them anymore because I have turned them off. Now if I come back here and turn it back on, then we can see the values that we have here, which are support and resistance. So you have to be hovering over to see the values there, but now that it's clicked on, you can see when I hover over, the values are there, and those are our support and resistance lines. Then we can see if I hover off, it's not there. Now keep in mind the cursor is right here and the values are there. So I'm going to come back, click this again. Now we can see they're not there no matter where I go. They're just not there, and that's okay. We can still measure and see if we put our cursor here, come all the way to the side, we can see the value. If you want them on, all you have to do is come back, click over here. Then it'll show you the values automatically. Moving forward into visibility, this will allow the chart to work on different time frames. If you don't have a box selected, it won't be available on that time frame. So since we're looking at the minutes, let's just go ahead and uncheck the minutes. Now we can see it disappears. And if I go up to the 1 hour time frame, it's going to be there. So if I don't want to see this on the 1 hour time frame, but I want to see it on the 4 hour and above, then I'll just say, okay, it's visible on the 4 hour and above. And now it's not going to be available on the 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour. 4 hour up, it'll be available. So you can pinpoint whatever time frames you want this on really specifically. If you only want it on 1 and 3 hour, then we can see it takes it away from the 4 hour chart. If we go back to the 3 hour, it's there. So the visibility allows you to remove it from any time frame you don't want it to be on. We'll just go ahead and put that 1 through 24 to enable it to be on every time frame. Now we're going to take a look at setting alerts. So we already showed you earlier how to set an alert for the different horizontal support and resistance lines. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at setting alert for dynamic support and resistance. So we're going to come right here. We're going to click on this, go to add an alert on visual assistance. Then we can see here, earlier we used BTC crossing, and it was either up or down the value of visual assistance, and then you had right here any of the plots that you could choose from. So now we're going to, instead of doing the condition here, we're going to go ahead and put visual assistance, and then when the option here is changed. So now we have dynamic resistance or dynamic support. So if you use any of these other values right here, you're not going to be able to get an alert trigger out of this, as the support and resistances will not cross each other. So you'll simply just leave it right here. And then if you want to use the dynamic resistance, which is going to be this line, it's going to be different in your trading scenario because price is going to be different. But you can see here current market prices between dynamic resistance and dynamic support on the 1H time frame. So we're setting this alert on the 1H time frame. So when the price of this crosses dynamic resistance, so that means if price comes up, whenever it breaks over this line, you'll get an alert. And if we set it to go where dynamic support, Then when price comes down here, if it doesn't come up here and it breaks down here instead, we'll get an alert whenever price gets to that point. And it'll say price at dynamic support. Then you can go ahead and name it whatever you'd like. You can create that. So now we have one for dynamic support. Go right here, and then the other one for resistance. Now we'll create those alerts. We'll come right here into our alerts. So there you go. Then you have those alerts created. And now when price comes to that point or that point, you're going to get an alert. When they're broken, you're going to have to change it if you want it on a larger outlying alert. So in this instance, you can't set it for, remember how we set this up for multiple plots? You can choose which one you wanted an alert for. Here you can only get an alert for the immediate dynamic resistance and support points. You can do this on each time frame. So if you have one set up on the 1 hour time frame, you can go into the 15 minutes, set up another alert, and then you get a trigger right there or right there. If you want it on a larger time frame as well, you can have the 1 hour and the 4 hour. So then you'll see that price has broken out of that support zone. So the next one will trigger for would be right here, and then we have a dynamic resistance line right here. So you can do it for any time frame and have alerts for multiple time frames, and remember, multiple assets too. Now that you know how this indicator works, you can go ahead and put it on any asset, whether it be crypto, forex, whatever you like to trade. You can put it on and see instantaneously horizontal support and dynamic support and resistance lines. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to pick up this indicator using the link below.